So today we're going to be looking at multiplying graphs of functions. All right, and what this topic is if you take different graphs of different functions and multiply those graphs together, you get a brand new distinct graph. Okay, and we're going to see how that works. All right, and the first one, we have the s of x and we have v of x as our two graphs. All right, and we want to graph a brand new equation with a graph of p of x. All right, using s of x times v of x as our guide. All right, so now what you're going to do with this is pretty straightforward, but it's kind of graphical. Okay, you want to see it. All right, first thing is, where the two equations are going to cross the x-axis, you're going to put points there, because those are the points that are going to be in your new equation. Okay, so those 2 points are going to exist in our new equation, our new graph. All right, what you're going to do next is you're going to make kind of quadrants based off of those points. So let's make some new lines. We're going to make them red. And we're going to go through the points on our x-axis. Okay, these are going to be the regions we're going to look at to figure out where our new graph is going to be. Okay. So what we're going to do first, we have 3 regions now. We have 1, 2 in the middle, and 3 on the end. Okay. So we're looking at the lines and where they are in each region. So we have this line here and this line here. Okay, and we're looking at what are the y values for these lines. So if you look at the x-axis as either above or below, these 2 lines are below the x-axis, which means they are both negative. All right, and then what we figure out is what times a negative, what is a negative times a negative? That would be a positive. So your line is going to start positives because you're going to multiply these 2 things together. So a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, so we have a positive graph here. Next, in the second quadrant, we have this graph here, which is positive, and this graph here, which is negative. And a positive times a negative is a negative. And then finally, on the third quadrant here of our graph to the far right, we have a positive and a positive graph. Okay, because both graphs are above the x-axis, which means they're positive y values. And a positive times a positive is a positive. So what we're going to have is the graph's going to, let's erase some of this stuff. Okay, as the graph goes through and goes through our points, these little markings are going to help us figure out where the graph is. So let's make this blue again. So the graph's going to be positive, starting out positive. It's going to go down to hit this first point, then it's going to go negative. It's going to come back up and go positive through the other point. Okay. So that's our new graph for our new equation p of x. So we can label this as p of x. All right. Now that makes sense because we have 2 linear functions. Let's say this is let's see, what is this? S of x is equal to x, and v of x is equal to x plus 2. And if we're multiplying those 2 things together, we get x times x plus 2. So when we multiply them, we'll get x squared plus 2x. Now, because that's squared, that means that this is when you multiply them, it becomes a quadratic equation and it forms a parabola. And that makes sense because when we look at our graph here, based on the points and the regions, whether it's positive or negative, it forms a parabola. All right? Let's look at this again in a maybe a more complicated version, because now we have 3 lines. We're going to multiply Lx, Wx, and h of x all together, okay, to form a new sketch called v of x. All right. So again, we start off with our points, so that cross the x-axis there. This one crosses here. This one crosses here. So if you think about why do we still going to cross there? Well, if those factors, the equations that make up those graphs become the factors of our new graph. And the factors are still going to equal the same thing. Excuse me. Okay, so let's make our little regions here. We have a region here. We have one here. and then 1 here. So in this case, for this graph versus the other graph, now we have 4 different regions. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to look at all the equations, or sorry, where all the lines are in comparison to those regions. Okay, so the first region, we have a positive, and a negative. So what is a positive times a negative going to give you? That gives you a, well, let's rewrite it someplace a little bit easier. Positive times a negative is going to equal a negative number. So our first line is going to be down here at negative. All right. Next, for the second region, we have a positive, and a positive. All right. And that means positive times positive is going to equal a positive. All right. For the third region, we have a positive, and a negative, which will give us a negative number. And lastly, we have a positive, a negative, and this red line, although you can't still see it as it keeps going down, is going to be another negative. So we have a positive, and a negative, and a negative. So a negative times a negative is a positive, times another positive is a positive. All right, so that's the order we're going to go in. So let's erase these green circles and then write our graph based on our calculations. Okay, so we have the first part is going to start as negative, then it's going to go into the positive range, it's going to go up, and it's going to come back down and go negative. After it goes to the next point, it's going to come back up and go positive for the last point. So that's what your graph should look like. So this is going to be v of x. Okay. All right, so we can do that again for all these other problems. So we got 4 more to go. Let's keep practicing them. I'll do 2 together, and then I'm going to have you guys try 2 of them on your own and pause the video. We can come back and see how you did. Okay, so again, we're going to have our points where the graph's going to cross or touch the x-axis. So that's 1 right here. And this parabola is going to touch the x-axis right at 0. So we're going to have our quadrants here, our regions. So we have 1 here, and 1 here. Okay, so we have 1, 2, and 3. All right. So first one, all right, we're going to have a positive graph here, and then this blue graph is going to be negative down here, times a negative is going to give you a negative number. All right, for the second region, we have a negative graph and a negative graph. Negative times a negative is a positive. The last one, we're going to have a negative and a negative graph, which is also going to be positive. So negative times a negative is going to equal a positive again. Okay, and we'll show you how this works. It's a little bit different. All right. Change colors again. So the first part we start off with is a negative. Second part is going to be positive. And then here, as we hit this, we're not going to go through because the next one is positive. So if we go down and through, it's going to be negative. But it says our region is going to be positive. So we're going to bounce off that point and go back up. Okay, so we're not going to go through the point. We're going to bounce onto the point and then go back up. All right, because these are both positive numbers right here. Okay, and that's possible that happens. All right, and this is, let's go back to this one real quick. We got to label it. We want to make it k of x. So I'll label the line. All right. Let's try this again. We've got one more. I don't know what this 3 is for, so you can ignore that entirely. All right, so we have our points. We're going to have a point here, here, and here. So let's make our regions. Going to be very tight. Okay, So this time we have 4 regions. Okay. Let's give it this way. All right. So we have, let's make it green. So the first one, we have a positive and a negative, which gives a negative answer. The second one, in between these two things, these are both negative graphs. So negative times a negative is going to equal a positive. Let's make sure that looks like an actual equal sign. There we go. All right. The third quadrant here is going to have a negative and a positive. And then the fourth quadrant, we have a positive and a positive. Okay, so then we can look at, now that we have our calculations done for positives and negatives, we can now look at what the graph's going to look like. So we start off with negative. We're going to go up to positive. Oh, let's make our point there a little bit better. So we're going to go up to positive, and it's going to go back through, and then the third quadrant's negative, so we're going to go down and up again. The last quadrant's going to be positive, so we're going to go back up. So here's our graph. All right, that graph's going to be called m of x. All right, so take a moment, all right, and try the last 2 problems. So pause the video, try the last 2 problems, and then we can restart the video in a second after you're done with those 2 and see how you did. All right, so hopefully you pause the video, you tried out both those problems on your own to see what you could do. Now you're back to see if you got it right. All right, so in this case, again, we're going to look at the points where they cross the x-axis. So they both cross at that spot, and the other one crosses right here. Okay, so we're going to make our regions. Okay, so in the first region, we have a negative and a positive. So negative times a positive gives you a negative. All right, and the second region, we have a positive and a negative again, which is going to give us a positive and a negative again, which gives us a negative answer. The last region, if you kept this red graph going down, it's going to be negative and a negative, all the way into the bottom. So we got a negative and a negative gives us a positive. So I'm going to erase the green circles. Put it back on the blue. Actually, we're going to put black on this one. All right. So the first region, we start off negative, and we go up to the point, but the second region is going to be negative again. So we're going to bounce off that point and then come back down and go back up to the third point. And the third point's going to be, after the third point's going to be positive. We're going to go through that point and then go up. Okay, so we are bouncing off this first point to get to the next spot. So it's not going through the point, it's bouncing off the point and then going back up. And this is our new graph called h of x. All right, last one. All right, we have a point here, a point here, a point here, and a point here. So we've got a bunch of different regions. So we'll make all of our little dashed lines to divide everything up. Okay, do green. All right, and the first graph and the first region, so this red graph is going to keep going up. So that's going to be positive over here on the left, and the blue graph is going to be negative. So a positive times a negative is going to equal a negative. All right, and the second region, all right, we have the blue graph here and the red graph here. They're both positive, so positive times a positive is going to equal a positive. All right. And the third region here, we have the blue graph is going to be positive. The red graph is going to be negative. So we have a positive and a negative, which gives you a negative. In the fourth region, blue graph is negative, red graph is negative. Negative times a negative is going to be a positive. And lastly, the red graph is positive, And the blue graph is going to keep going down, so that's going to eventually be negative. So we have positive and a negative equals a negative. Okay, let's erase the green circles so our graph's not so crowded. And we'll draw our sketch. Now these are all just sketches because we don't actually have the points for them right now. So we're just sketching out what the graph probably looks like, but it's not exact, and that's okay. So in the first section, we're starting off negative. And then we're going to go through the first point and be positive. And the second point, we're going to go through the second point and be negative. And then the third point, we're going to go through that and become positive. And the fourth point, we're going to go through that and become negative. So this is our graph. Again, this is just a sketch. It is not exactly what the graph would look like. It is just a sketch. Okay? That's what it looks like, and that would be our h of x graph. All right? So that is how to take two graphs or more graphs and multiply them together and find out the sketch of the new graph. All right, so try the practice problems on the practice sheet, and good luck. Make sure if you have questions, you will reach out and ask them. Come to a Zoom, email me, do something to get yourself ready to go because the test is in about a week. All right, good luck.